So welcome to this week's episode of Chop the Rock. Today our guest chef is Mark Abernathy. He's the executive chef and owner of some very, very well-known and much beloved restaurants here in Little Rock, Localuna and Red Door. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us
It's
today.
great to be here. Thanks for doing what you do here to help spread the gospel.
Well, it is the gospel.
Food.
Yes, it is. It is. So tell us, what are we going to be cooking here today?
Well, we are going to make frijoles borrachos. Now, that's basically drunken beans. Now, what you may say, well, what is a whoop-de-doo chef making a pot of beans for? Well, we're going to be talking about Latin cuisine. I cut my teeth on Latin cuisine, grew up here, but started with Fridays and moved to San Antonio in the early 70s, and then spent 13 years in San Antonio and Mexico opening and running various restaurants down there. Fell in love with the Latin cuisine and the Latin people and the culture. And then in 1986, I moved back here and opened a little Mexican place called Juanita's down on Main Street.
Just a little Mexican place called Juanita's.
Kind of changed the landscape on Mexican food in Little Rock. And then a little bit later, opened a place called Blue Mesa Grill, which was also cutting edge Southwest cuisine. So my roots are pretty deep into Latin cuisine, and Localuna still has a lot of Latin and Southern influence in a number of its dishes there. So we're going to, the key, when you think about Latin cuisine, especially Mexican and Southwest food, you can't think of that without thinking about beans. It's
Absolutely.
like a sandwich with no bread.
Right.
I mean, it's just it's an integral part. So if that's an integral part, they need to be good.
Absolutely.
So
that's the base of what everything else is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a key ingredient in so many Latin meals.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about how to really make great beans. And in the process, with Food Network and the internet, just throwing a recipe out there, I think it is good. But as I said, if you want tomato soup, you can find 40 tomato soup recipes online.
Right.
So we're going to talk about technique and ingredients and all of that, which will make you a better cook.
That's right, and it will not only better your cooking skills, but make your eating experience a whole lot more enjoyable.
There you go.
There's nothing worse than finding a recipe online, getting really excited about it, and you follow the directions, but they don't have those tips and tricks, and this needs to go in first, and that kind of thing. And then you put all of this work into it, especially like an inexperienced chef like I am, and then you taste it, and it's kind of like, was it really worth all that effort and the cleanup? So we hope that this helps everybody better their experience in cooking and eating at home.
Okay, well, let's get rolling. Okay, first of all, and also, if we have time, we're going to do a steak tampacana, which is a great steak dish and vegetable dish that would accompany well with the beans. So anyway,
fantastic.
we'll see how that
all
goes.
right.
Okay, I've started off. Over here, I have a pot of pinto beans, a big pot. If you're going to make beans, make some beans. Come on. They're inexpensive, and if you can go the trouble of make them, they keep forever, and they're versatile, and I'll show you some other things you can do with them. Now, this is canned beans that I've allowed to simmer for 10 minutes. Now, you say, oh, you're a purist chef. What are you doing with canned beans? Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
There's two ways to do beans. One is you can use canned beans. The other is you can use dried beans.
Right.
Now, if you use dry beans, you put your pintos, you spread them out on a sheet pan first. You have to look at them because every now and then there'll be a little rock.
A little tiny stone, and it looks like a bean.
They've gotten much better about that, but to be on the safe side, I still spread them out on a sheet pan and look for them. Then you can cook them two different ways. You can cook them for a long time, about 6 or 7 hours, or you can soak them overnight and they'll cook in about 2 hours.
Right.
Now, there's different schools of thought. I think they taste the same either way you go.
Me too.
They still come out cooked beans.
Right.
Now, one of the keys is if you cook beans in water, then they're cooking in water. If you cook them in stock, mix some water with your chicken stock and some pork fat, then that flavor is going to work its way into the beans.
Right.
Now, why do I do canned beans? Okay. Canned beans, when you cook beans, it's still tricky. I mean, it's really hard to get them perfectly done. Where they're not too mushy and they're not too hard. These are perfect.
Every single time.
Every single time.
And consistently,
The problem is they are impacting this brine, this stuff. And it's not bad stuff, but it's just not the most appetizing, and it's not making the most of the beans.
Right.
So what I do is I'll use canned beans, I'll put them in a colander, then wash them in hot water, and washing all this stuff off. So I end up with clean, perfectly cooked beans.
Gotcha.
I transfer those to this pot with chicken stock. Now, we're going to add some stuff to this pot of beans to take it from here up to here.
So tell me first, before we add all these wonderful things, this is a great pot. It is, does the pot make a difference?
I don't think so.
You
Not
don't
really.
think so?
I love cast iron cookware. It's the original nonstick.
That's the only cookware I have. My grandmother would not let you in her
It's great
kitchen.
stuff.
Yeah.
It really transfers the heat well. I think it transfers heat better than aluminum.
Okay.
And so our steel pot. So for beans, I think it's great. Plus you can really simmer with cast iron, I think. So,
okay, all right.
So, okay, I'm going to start off. First of all, this is a little bacon fat. This is some Petit Mountain hog jowl.
Ooh,
The hog jowl comes from the cheeks of the hog. It has less cure, less smoke. It's a different pork flavor. We're going to put that in there.
Okay.
I've also got bacon that we're going to use later.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now, the other ingredient we're going to throw in here is we're going to put a bunch of onions. That's basically a whole onion.
A whole purple onion, pretty finely chopped.
Pretty finely chopped.
Okay.
Red bell pepper. Now, red bell pepper honestly doesn't have much flavor.
But it sure is pretty.
It's pretty. It's pretty. So we're just going to dress up this pot of beans
Oh, they look great
with the red bell pepper and the onions.
So I'm going to stir that in there really well.
Now these beans had been simmering in the chicken stock and water for 10 minutes before we started.
Okay.
So now we're going to leave them. Now I'm going to take a minute and show you how to cut an onion. Okay. When I do cooking classes and stuff, this is one of the favorite things that people like is how do you dice an onion? It sounds so simple, but okay, here's the way I do it. You take an onion and you cut it lengthwise, not across the middle, so you end up with a root on one end and where the stems came out on the other. Now you come back in, you cut the stem end off.
Okay.
You've still got your roots. The reason you want to leave the roots on there is it holds the onion together.
Oh.
Keeps the onion from coming apart. So we can take off this top layer. Okay, now we got a clean onion. Now we're going to come in and just make a slit along the side.
Okay.
Like this, along the top like this. Then come in the middle like this and just work your way across the onion like this. Now, if you want, depending on what size slice you want, you can control if you want a dice or a chop or a finely diced. There you go. There's your onion.
And so it keeps it together. It gives you something to hang on to. So if you're not good at I can hold this and tuck my fingers in so I don't chop them off.
Just hold on to the root.
I like it. You grab it by the hair and you just chop it up.
Yeah. Make sure you have a really sharp knife.
Right.
And be careful when you're cutting into there.
Right, so that you don't slip. And the ability to have something to hang on with that probably means that you're dealing with that onion for a lot less time. Yeah. So you're going to shed a lot fewer tears.
A lot fewer tears.
Yeah.
And you can cut an onion under a little running water, some other things. You can freeze it for a little while to kind of reduce that. But if you use this method, I mean, how long did that take?
20 seconds maybe with explanation. So that's a fantastic tip, y'all.
Now I'm going to keep the other half of this because we're going to use it in the Tompicana in a minute if we have time. Okay, now what else is going in these beans? Whoa, well, we got to have some jalapeno.
Got to have a little
Got to
spice.
have some pepper. Now let's talk about peppers for a minute because I did a class 3 years ago at the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival on the hottest peppers in the world.
Is that the ghost pepper?
Used to be.
Oh, okay.
It used to be. That's called a jalokia. Is jalokia.
Jalokia,
which is a ghost pepper. And peppers, the heat in peppers is caused by an element called capsaicin, which is a neurotoxin actually. And it is that's where the heat comes from, and it's measured in what's called Scoville units. So a pepper like a jalapeno may have 2,500 to 5,000 Scoville units. Okay. So a real hot jalapeno has up to 5,000 Scoville units. Now, a habanero has about 200,000.
That just sounds like it would light your mouth on fire.
Well, get this. The ghost pepper has 1.25 million Scoville units, and the hottest pepper now is called a Carolina Reaper, and it is 2.2 million Scoville units. Now, the hottest jalapeno is 5,000. These are 2.2 million. So I had some of these peppers at the Atlanta Food Festival, and I got to volunteer up, and we had made them sign a deal where if they died, we weren't responsible and all this stuff.
A liability.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with it, and we actually stuck a toothpick in one, and then I put it in my mouth and heated it. Well, immediately my whole front of my face went numb. Went numb. These peppers can literally kill you. They are so strong.
So why though?
Oh, you can't do anything with them really. They're just nuts. Now habaneros are very, very hot, but they are delicious peppers.
They have a lot of flavor.
Yeah,
to them.
And peppers, you can take the heat out. Peppers are fat and alcohol soluble, so you can soak them in alcohol and take some of the fat out.
Which is why a pickled jalapeno pepper is never as spicy as a fresh one. Is that correct?
Some of them get pretty spicy. Now I'm chopping some jalapeno, and what I do when I buy a jalapeno in the store, I bite the end off of it. And the reason I do that, because in the winter sometimes they're not any hotter than a bell pepper.
Right.
And they're just not very hot. So first of all, you want to kind of know how hot it is. So I taste food in the grocery store all the time.
That's fantastic.
Don't tell anybody.
No, don't worry.
Okay.
I wouldn't sell you out if I saw you in the grocery store.
Now, a lot of the heat in the pepper is in the seeds and stems. Most people know that. What most people don't know is the majority of the heat in the pepper is in these tiny little membranes on the inside. So if you really want to take some of the heat out of these peppers, you scrape them. Now,
see that. I also saw you, when you first took this pepper and cut it in half, you flipped it over and you kind of mashed it out with your hand.
Yeah, you mash it out and you want to put the skin side down. That's when you cut a pepper, put the skin side down, same way like with a bell pepper.
Okay.
Bell pepper. It just cuts easier. You can mash it like this, put it down, and it cuts easier working through the top part of the pepper than it does working through the other side.
Okay, fantastic.
All right, so we've got our jalapenos in there. Now, this quickly on the onions. The onions I added to this are red onions. I think they give it some color. They give it some flavor. Yellow onions tend to be a little bit sweeter. Red onions tend to go back and forth. Some are hot, some are sweet.
Right.
It's kind of a little bit of a crapshoot.
It is.
White onions tend to be a little sharper and a little more bite to them.
Right.
So when you're using your onions, you want to kind of keep that in mind.
And is that typically for onion use a personal preference? Which kind of flavor you like better?
Yeah, you can mix and match them.
Okay.
A lot of dishes, like I'm going to use the white onions in this tampiqueña. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and turn the skillet on now.
Okay. Oh, there it goes.
And get that going. Oh, one other ingredient. Beans borrachos means drunken beans. El borracho is the drunk. Well, we're going to add some beer to these beans.
So I was noticing on your recipe that you let that beer sit out opened overnight.
Yes. What you want this beer to, beer has live yeast in it, and the yeast is really kind of held at bay because of the refrigeration. When you open it up, you let the air in, you let it warm up, that yeast takes off.
Just activates it.
Yeah, you bet. It starts fermenting. And so that's going to give you, it gives it a different flavor altogether.
Like more of a like a richness.
Yeah, yeah. And I like the dark beer because I like the grain in the as opposed to an IPA or a lager.
Yeah.
I like ales and dark beer better for this dish, but you can use any beer you want to, and you don't have to use the beer. And of course, the alcohol is going to all cook out of this anyway.
Exactly what I was about to ask.
So you don't have to worry about that.
So it's really about the flavoring. It's not about a buzz or anything like that, because you're going to cook that out.
Okay. Now, let's get these veggies going.
All right.
For the steak topicana. And while these beans are simmering over here. By the way, you don't ever want your beans to boil.
Okay.
Always simmer them, cook them at a medium-low temperature, because once they start boiling, they start banging around, and it knocks all the meat out of the center and just leaves you with these bean skins. So
and then the mush goes to the bottom of the pan.
Yeah.
And then it turns into refried beans.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, great.
Now, okay, so I've got a little olive oil, or you can use vegetable oil going here.
And this is a non-stick skillet.
This is a non-stick skillet, which I love. I'm going to turn, ooh, I've got this a little bit high here. Let me turn this down. I'm going to add these sliced bells into there.
All right, we'll let those saute, and then you've got your onion coming up. So this is like a sort of fajita-style onion, so you don't have to chop them quite so much.
Fajita-style onions and peppers. Okay.
And you don't have to worry if you're afraid to toss your I'm not very good at the whole.
You can stir.
You can stir it. You can, use like a rubber-tipped tong so you don't scratch your nonstick pan. So
now here's that jalapeno that I just seeded and stemmed and scraped the good stuff out of, and I'm gonna cut some really thin little strips of this, and that's gonna go in there as well.
That's good for your flavor as well as your color for that dish.
Now, I'm going to take a couple of these beautiful tomatoes over here.
So tell me what kind of tomatoes these are. There's, it's kind of like beer. There's 100 different kinds of tomatoes anymore.
We're filming this in the summer.
And we are. It's tomato
this is
season.
An Arkansas, homegrown.
Mm-hmm. You can't beat them. If you grew up in the South, look how beautiful that is, y'all.
Come on.
Ugh.
Now, we get about 5 months of great tomatoes.
We really do.
And we are so blessed.
We are.
And I am, oh my gosh, do I love
I will not eat a tomato out of season. I just can't do it.
Well,
it's just so
let me tell you what you get. In the winter, out of season, you can look for comparis, which are these small tomatoes with the stems attached, not the big ones with the stems attached. Yeah,
they're pretty, but they don't have any flavor.
They're pretty, but no flavor.
Right.
All show, no go. These are delicious. And and you find them most places now. Also, the little cherry tomatoes, those have a lot of tomato flavor, and they're really good. All right, so we've got these veggies here, and I've just kind of sauteed them till they're really starting to get soft. Okay, now, and I'm going to finish these with some tomatoes. I'm going to just throw some tomatoes in the skillet and let those.
I think our burner might have gone out.
I turned it off.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's put some stuff together here.
Fantastic.
All right. Pick me some cilantro. Now let's talk about cilantro for a minute. When
Yes.
you get your cilantro home, cut the stems off, sit it in a cup of water in your refrigerator with a plastic bag on top.
So that they don't wilt.
It'll first of all, it'll pop back out. It'll keep well, and it'll look beautiful. Don't do that with basil. Keep your basil out on the counter. Don't put it in the fridge.
Do not refrigerate your basil.
Don't refrigerate the basil.
No, we may have to have you back just for an herb class.
There you go.
Those are good tips. So about how much we want? Just a good handful?
I want the leaves.
Just the leaves.
Roughly chop some leaves for me.
All right.
Here, I'll give you a little corner here.
We don't use the stems. Now, is there any case in which cilantro you would want the stems, or is it always?
Yeah, I mean the stems have flavor, so if you're going to cook with it, you can chop those stems up.
Okay.
If you're chopping it in like into guacamole or something like that. While you're doing that, I'm going to get us a bowl of beans.
So you always want to be careful, especially if you're inexperienced, when you're slicing anything. And one of the best tips that one of the chefs out at the culinary school gave me once, or gave a class I was taking, was you just don't ever let the tip of your knife come off of the board so you don't chop your fingers off.
That helps.
It does. It does help a lot.
My best tip with knives is just make sure they're really sharp.
Absolutely. You can do so much more, and it's so much less effort. And if you do accidentally hurt yourself with a sharp knife, it's going to be way less. Is that enough there for you?
Yeah. Now here's our bowl of beans that as they came out of the pot. Well, we're going to gill the lily. We're going to put some fresh cilantro. We're going to put some fresh tomatoes on top of here, and we're going to put some fresh, some crispy crumbled bacon on top.
So that gives you the mixture of the textures too, with the flavor of that.
And you've got the cooked onions and all that stuff in there, but you've also going to have some of that pop from the fresh cilantro and the fresh beans. Okay, set these over here. We're going to make a little room for a steak here.
So what cut of steak is this, and does that matter?
Well, this is a ribeye.
Okay.
You can,
I like a ribeye because it's got so much more flavor to it.
I love pork fat and beef fat and all that, so it's so we're gonna, with steak Mexicana, steak Tropicana, sometimes they just put it on top of the steak. In most Mexican restaurants, it's a real thin cut of meat.
Like a skirt steak?
Well, it's usually like a thin cut of sirloin or something like that. And there's a difference between strips and sirloins.
Right.
And the sirloins are a less expensive cut of meat. But they're good, and they work fine for this dish.
So this could be to your preference. And if you prefer a well-done meat, a well-done steak, which, I mean, so that's all to your preference. I kind of disagree with a well-done cut of steak.
Here's how I tell my kids this when they were growing up. I said, it's your mouth.
Right.
I don't have any business telling you what you like. So I don't ever diss anybody who likes a medium well steak or a well done steak.
Right. It's a texture thing, I think, for me, is that you have to cook it just right to keep it from being dry.
But what you like just doesn't matter to someone else because it's not your mouth.
I like that attitude there. Yeah.
Okay, now we'll come in with. Now, one thing I didn't do that I should have done is I should have checked these beans for salt. Chuck them in the pot because you want to add now the pork fat has some salt sometimes. The chicken stock a lot of times will have salt. But these beans I can tell you right now, are going to need salt, and I didn't add those. So you want to add that, and then you can add some black pepper as well. Okay. And we will just come in. Okay.
And just drizzle that right over the top there.
Make sure we get some of this.
So this looks very much like a fajita dish.
It is very much like a fajita dish.
And we were very lucky to have you here. And I don't remember if this was Blue Mesa or if this was a Juanita's thing, but you were one of the first people.
We were the first restaurant, as far as I know, we were the first restaurant in Arkansas to serve fajitas.
And I cannot imagine my life in the Mexican food realm without a fajita.
We were the first restaurant to serve homemade flour tortillas. At Blue Mesa, we were the first restaurant to use black beans and a lot of other ingredients that were not normally used in cuisine around here. And Blue Mesa Grill introduced the first white cheese dip in America. So
there you go.
The late 1980s. And
that's fantastic. So if y'all like any of this stuff, be sure and stop by one of Mark Abernathy's current endeavors with Red Door and Loca Luna. And if you see him, thank him for all of these things, because I cannot imagine not having those.
Loca Luna just celebrated our 22nd year.
Wow.
Is that not unbelievable?
That's incredible.
That makes me go, oh.
Yeah, don't think about that in terms of where that puts you, but just the fact that a restaurant could be so well loved and supported and frequented by so many people.
Well, we wouldn't be there without the support of everybody that has just been there for us through all these years, through ups and downs, and I can't. I'm so grateful and so thankful for that.
And it makes a difference with your staff too. So you've got a guy that's been there, Barry, I think is his
Barry,
name.
yeah,
yes.
But we've got people that have been there for
the whole time,
pretty much the whole time.
Yeah, that speaks volumes
which is
about the culture of your restaurant and the staff and what y'all are doing there, and the way that
it's a big family.
Feels.
We take care of everybody. So now, if you want to make fajitas out of this, I mean, I would normally just eat this the way it is.
Sure.
Here, set that right.
So if you're gonna low carb it up,
do we have just a tiny bit of time left?
We absolutely. We have as much time as you'd like.
Okay, I'm going to show you something cool.
Okay, great.
Now to heat your tortillas up, and there's some good sources now for some pretty fresh, reasonably fresh quality flour tortillas. I just honestly, I bring them to room temperature, then I'll finish them in a skillet till they just start to bubble.
There you go.
And there's your. So if you want to make some fajitas, you're good to go there. A little guacamole on that.
A little bit of sour cream maybe.
Yeah,
and you're good to
whatever.
Whatever cheese on top you
floats
prefer.
your bubble there. Okay.
So you are using a slotted spoon to get some of these beans out.
Yep. And we want to get
just a little bit of the stock.
A little bit more of the juice in here. I'm going to take a big blob of this butter.
I believe in butter. Butter and the bacon fat and those kinds of things too. If you're going to have it, you might as well have flavor in it.
And this is salted butter. You cook with unsalted and you flavor with salted.
All right, good tip there. You're adding some salt and pepper. And this again, you know, you're going to need it in the beans, but you would want to do that to taste.
You can do this in a blender.
Or like a food processor.
Or a food
These little
processor.
emulsifiers, our hand blenders, are a really interesting, unique, handy tool.
You can buy these now for like $10.
Right. And they won't take up the counter space that a lot of people just don't have for that. So ideally you'd want to put this in a deeper bowl. So we've got a little bit of hot bean juice splashing up. So that's what Mark's doing here, is just trying to make sure it doesn't go everywhere, doesn't burn anyone. And these things are way easier to clean than a traditional blender or food processor also.
Okay, now, refried beans are really, in Mexico, or in most places, they're really refried. They take the beans and they'll mash beans and they'll cook them in lard normally, or vegetable, but usually it's lard, the real stuff is, and it takes some of the moisture out of it and it reconstitutes them, not reconstitutes them, but
it kind of changes the texture.
Yeah, it changes the texture. But you want some good refried beans?
Ooh, check that out.
I mean, think of it. If you're starting with really good beans, then, you know.
That's way better than what you're going to get in a can. Are you kidding? Yeah.
So you got your pot of beans. You can take a big chunk of that, and actually you can let them cool down a little bit. Just go ahead and put the butter in there and so the butter's melted, and then just mash up a big thing of refried beans. Keep them in the fridge.
And look how quick that was. I think that we maybe spent 20 minutes tops on that dish. And so, you know, people don't have just a whole lot of time to spend in the kitchen anymore. You know, everybody's so busy with so many things, and you can absolutely relate to that, because aside from being one of the best known chefs with one of the greatest histories of restaurants in our city, you have had a great influence on development of neighborhoods, on community groups, leading some efforts with SOMA, which is probably one of our biggest up-and-coming areas right now that Little Rock is so excited about. Some efforts with Hunger Relief Alliance, and in addition to that, cooking shows and cooking classes and so many magazines and articles, and just a national presence that we are fortunate enough to call home to Mark Abernathy.
Thank you. It keeps me off the streets.
I just wonder when you sleep.
Yeah, when we put Juanita's in 1986 is when we opened. There was nothing down there. There was a community bakery had just opened, and there was a couple other little things, but it was overrun with some undesirables at the time. And so Joe Fox and I formed the improvement district down there, and we underground the utilities, we planted the trees, and fixed the drainage, which is the main thing. That corner where Juanita's, the water used to come up into the building on big rains.
It would flood that hill comes up behind it.
It would flood that whole area, and you really could not even walk into to the restaurant. It was, I mean, this deep.
Wow.
So we had a drainage project, all that, which really led the way for South Main to develop as it has, and I'm so proud of everything they've done down there.
Absolutely.
They've done a beautiful job.
And once it took off, man, in the last few years, it has just exploded.
Yeah, it's great. I was down there at lunch at the Root yesterday, so I was down there. I support all those guys. I support everyone. I want everybody in the business to be successful and
absolutely
to have a good time. The
more the merrier, the better. I mean, and one thing that we hear in the tourism business is that people who have never been to Little Rock just don't really have much knowledge, and that's something that everyone's trying to change. But once they get here, they are beside themselves surprised and impressed, and our foodie scene is one of the biggest, most impressive things that people find and are surprised with here.
And that's, I'm not opening any more restaurants. I'm happy with what I've got. So a lot of my focus now is on really helping to get the word out to the rest of the United States that Little Rock really does have a very vibrant food scene. We've got some super talented young chefs, and we just got back. Just took some chefs to Atlanta, to the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, where we kicked butt.
And that is, y'all, if y'all aren't familiar with the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, it is an internationally renowned.
It is the top, most premier Southern food festival there is, and with 600 members of the press, and it is an incredible event. And we went from not having much of a presence. I was on the Founders Council of the festival 6-7 years ago, and I've been trying to get us to be more involved. This year we showed up. We did 2 high-profile events, and that's all we were talking about was those Arkansas boys can cook.
That's right.
And so it was great. So we're going to keep building on that.
That's fantastic.
And keep making that happen because, I mean, we can hang with the best of them out there.
I believe that. So we're so glad to have folks like you right here in our hometown.
And thanks for what you do.
Thank you. So, all right, y'all, just one real quick reminder. When in season, and right now it is very much farmers market season.
It is.
So we're May through September. We have folks who sell beef, who sell chicken. You can get your cilantro, your peppers, your onions there, and those absolutely beautiful homegrown Arkansas tomatoes. So make sure that you have an opportunity to stop by if it is in season. We've also got a pork guy, so you can get some bacon. You can get some hog jowl, cured, uncured.
There you go.
Just look for it.
Right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Don.
Y'all check us out for our next episode of Chop the Rock.
So long.